Hey, I'm Scott at ediblemusic.com. When you finish up your mix and start to get ready to move it into the mastering stage, that is a monumental moment. Just like when you finish writing a song, finish recording it, now you've finished mixing it, and it feels really gratifying to be able to move it from one stage into the next. But there are some really important things to think about when you bounce or export or mix down your song as you move it into that final mastering stage. And I want to help you to make sure that you're choosing the right settings as you export. The very first thing you want to do, though, is to have a look at the actual track itself on the timeline and make sure that there's about a second, maybe a little bit more, but at least a second at the beginning and at the end of the song that just contains some silence. So if your track begins right on the one at the very beginning of the timeline, you might just need to nudge things over about a bar or so, just so that you can give yourself that silence at the beginning of the track, because this will be useful during the mastering stage. The next thing you'll want to do is to check your master track or your master channel to make sure that if you have a limiter on it, that the limiter is turned off. A lot of folks who I teach how to mix and how to master will have a limiter on that channel. Sometimes if they want to bounce out their mix just to test it out, they'll use a limiter to bring up the volume. But the limiter is more of a mastering tool, so you want to save it for the mastering process and the mastering stage. So now we can just turn it off, and you want to make sure that you're exporting your mix without any limiting being engaged on it. Now you can get into your actual settings. No matter the workstation that you're using, you'll have the option of selecting the bit rate and bit depth of the file that you're going to be outputting to go into the mastering stage. Here, you just want to choose the exact settings of the project itself. You don't want to choose anything that's lower, because that conversion process will also be saved for the mastering stage. Here, you just want to match it with the project that you've been working on in your mix. You'll also have the option of normalization, and this usually will bring the peak level of your mix up to the maximum, which is usually around -1 decibels. But here you don't want to do that either, because there is some more processing that is going to be done during the mastering stage. And so it's okay if your mix is a little bit quieter than being all the way up to that ceiling, because the mastering stage will take care of that. So turn the normalization off. You'll also want to choose between the dithering options, but that is again saved for the mastering stage. So here you're just outputting a file. You're not going to apply any dithering, because dithering is the very, very last thing to be applied to this stereo file before it's actually ready to be distributed. It's the very last thing you'll do. So that's again another thing that will be saved for the mastering stage. Apart from this, so you're unchecking normalization, you're unchecking dithering. You'll also have the option of choosing what kind of file type you want to export. You'll usually want to choose between a WAV file or WAV file and a FLAC file or FLAC file. I actually usually recommend to print both of those. So you might do a bounce through or an export or a mix down of each of these file types. And I want to help you remember these settings as well. So maintain the same bit depth and bit rate of your project. Deselect or turn off the normalization option, turn off the dithering option, and choose either a WAV or a FLAC file or both. And then after that, you're ready to export, and you want to choose the file name that you've got. And it's really useful, I think imperative actually, to use a system for your file name habits. The one that I use here goes track number, track name, descriptor, and date with an underscore in the middle. And this way, when it's in your file explorer, you're able to sort things very easily. So if you have an album, you want to have the track number first, then the song name, of course. And the descriptor will mean either, say it's your production session or your production project file, and then you'll have a mix, which is this. The mix down is the mix that you've produced, and then after the mastering stage, you'll replace that descriptor with the masters. So you'll have saved these various steps. And so you'll be able to identify the track, and you'll be able to identify the stage in your process. And alongside that stage, by having the date, is you'll be able to sort through when you have actually worked on it instead of having just the name 1 or 2 or revision or 3. Having actual calendar aligned dates will give you a much better way of just browsing through your file explorer if you ever need to return to an old project and seeing the progress that you've made over the course of the song as you've been creating it. And an example here I've got is track 1. The song is called No States. The descriptor is the mix down, and the date is 2025-09 for September, and the date is 23rd. Using that across all of your projects will help you to have a really well organized folder of all of your projects that you're working on. And it is especially useful if you're working on a whole album of songs. Then it will help you to distinguish between the songs themselves and the stages that you're working on them. And before you actually bounce things down, I want you to run through this checklist that I made for you to ensure that your song is actually sounding and has the characteristics that will transition into a really strong quality master. I want you to get that at ediblemusic.com/ready. It'll give you a few items to check off just to make sure that your song is in the best condition possible so that the mastering stage will go much more smoothly. Now you've got all of this set up, you've checked your song to make sure that there's a bit of silence around the edges, you've turned off your limiter, you've unchecked and checked all of what you need for the settings, and you've printed off the mix down, and now it's ready for mastering.